Thank you for joining us in our latest episode of Acumen in Conversation. I'm here with Amrita Galati, who is joining us fairly recently to our Acumen University Partner Connect team, AUPC for short. You'll hear that throughout this session. Amrita, tell me about yourself and your role and experience, please.
Okay, so 6 months into the role, here I am with you in the UK.
Woo-hoo.
I have been a high school educator. That's my first avatar of my professional life, and probably one of the most enjoyable of teaching grade 11 and 12 psychology, moving on to becoming a college and career counselor, and building the team at the two campuses in Delhi. Thoroughly enjoying helping kids discover themselves and know about universities, go through the anxiety of applications, of predicted scores, etc. And, just helping kids through that, kids and families through that process, and building systems in schools that would support the student journey. So I was in my own school for about 13 years. So like I tell everyone, the joke on me is that I never got out of school. And then, of course, like school kids, I graduated to university. That's where I worked after a long stint at schools. So I worked at a private liberal arts university in India, managing their internationalization and their strategic programs, which included summer programs and summer semester for undergraduate students across the world and domestically. Fast forwarding from there to the next experience, which was at a nonprofit to build capacity for college and career counseling in schools, which meant that I developed and delivered training programs for high school educators in the space of college and career counseling. So having worked at a school, then at a university, and then sort of putting that together to deliver and to create and deliver programs which would support effective delivery of counseling in schools in the domain of college choices, higher education choices, self-discovery, etc. And here I am at Acumen, sort of connecting the dots of my previous roles to sort of support the universities in their endeavor to work with schools and also support other organizations and high schools across the world in their agenda for internationalization, and trying to do that in a way that sort of adds a lot of value to the experience of everyone involved, from scratch to the delivery.
It's a lot of hands-on experience. On behalf of Acumen, and I'm sure our university partners, it's so great to have you. So thank you so much for joining Acumen, but also just joining me here today. So are you ready to get started?
Absolutely.
All right, let's go. So when we're talking about K-12 schools and in India and South Asia, what is a common misconception that universities might have?
I think, sort of two. One, that most students need scholarship, and or students are not willing to think beyond rank.
In what terms of rank?
Rank of the institution, of the university. I think a lot of universities think that it's very hard to have conversations beyond ranking. And I really think there's immense scope in making students think about higher education, international education, in many ways beyond ranking.
And how do universities do that? How do they stand out with students universities in particular, that maybe aren't in the top 20 in ranking? How do they stand out with students?
Okay, so like I used to talk to students, I think you don't tell, you show and tell, right? So I think demonstrating faculty strength, demonstrating outcomes of education at their institution, demonstrating opportunities at the institution which are both academic and non-academic and which add up in very purposeful, interesting, and personal ways for students, and sort of make the way for their journey to start, their professional journey to start. To think of, and I think very importantly, by understanding the school ecosystem, which is very different for a school in a metro city in India versus, let's say, a school in Singapore versus a school in down south, etc. So I think just understanding the cultural nuances, the type of school, the type of influence in that ecosystem of the school, and then sort of understanding the whys of the regions where they're, reaching out, and then coming to how that can be done a little differently, or what are the other options in, so just to give you an example, like a lot of times a student, when I was a counselor, would say, I want to be a doctor. Okay. And I'm like,
Typical.
okay. Yeah. And I'm like, why do you want to be a doctor? And they're like, oh, I want to help people. Okay, so I'm like, okay, why don't you become a teacher? That's also helping. That's helping many more dreams than what one doctor can do. Why don't you think about social service? Why don't you think about being a janitor? Like that.
Yep.
So I think a lot of students just think that I need to do X to get to this outcome. But there may be another route to that outcome. Or they may not know why they're thinking about that outcome. So I think universities engaging in dialogue and making them see that there are other possibilities. There are either other routes to the same destination, or understand where that destination is coming from and what could be alternate destinations too. So really to talk about, what are student interests, what are the influences on those interests, etc. And that's when you have a conversation. That's when you tell them that maybe what a brand or a rank does, what is its value, and where does it fit in, and how important is it, or it's not.
So when we think about that misconception that you said about ranking and how students don't necessarily just focus on ranking, how are students finding information out about universities where they're now aspiring to go? Again, maybe they aren't the top ranked university, but they still want to go there. How are these students finding that information out?
Okay, so I think students are finding this information a lot from their alumni network, their school alumni network.
So like word of mouth and...
Word of mouth. From their counselors who are now getting to see universities, not just hear about them. They're getting to know this from their family, friends who are, a lot of them who are in different countries or different parts of the world. So may have a broader view or a more real-time view rather than someone sitting back in another country. And also, I think a lot of universities are benefiting from meaningful social media presence. I mean, look at the number of kids who have LinkedIn profiles.
Yes.
High school
Absolutely.
kids who have LinkedIn profiles. So I think social media, digital presence, and the narrative that's being built through those.
Well, we definitely see more of that with the LinkedIn profiles. As a marketeer, I get asked more and more often to speak to schools and to speak to young students in building their very first. And these are students from the age of 15 onwards. So it's social media and more than just the TikToks and the X and Facebook, and now more of the professional networks, I think is more important. Over the last 16 years, Acumen has, through in-country representation, has engaged with students and parents And now with you on board in the APC team, we're more focused than ever on engaging with school counselors. And with your background and experience, how can universities maintain and establish long-lasting, beneficial relationships with school counselors?
So just a little background to, in my response to this question that may be useful. There's been a tremendous growth in the number of schools that have dedicated counseling services now. There's still a long way to go, but I think we've moved from a space of just behavioral or psychological counselors to actual college and career counselors in schools. So I think that's a welcome change, because school system as a whole is owning the responsibility for what next. So up until 5-10 years ago, schools were only concerned about the best exam results in grade 12 equivalent. Now they're also thinking about, okay, that's great, but we should also be supporting students in what follows after that, right? So there is a shift in the way schools are thinking about the journey of their student, which sort of starts afresh once they've, in the final year. So that's a very welcome change. And hence, you see more and more schools having dedicated counselors. And since this is not a very old phenomena, you have a lot of counselors who are in the 0 to 3 years of experience. Okay. Which means that's like really great platform for our universities to collaborate with counselors who are learning, who are figuring out about different universities, different opportunities, to have a conversation. The big important piece here is universities are responsible to responsibly educate the school counselor. Okay. And this doesn't mean that you know it all and they don't know anything. So it's first about understanding, what is that school like? Why are the kids motivated for international education? What do they think it is? What it actually is, right? So there's a whole lot of conversation to have with the counselors to understand their surrounding, their parent body, what are popular subjects in their school, why. You may have a school where you have lots of students that are applying for psychology or that are applying for math. And that could just be because they have a fantastic psychology and math teacher who's really inspiring, right? So that may not be a general trend of the region. So I think getting to know the school is a starting point of the relationship, right?
Yeah.
Between the universities and the school.
And then maintaining it.
And then maintaining it is asking about, so I would sort of, for example, when I started out, I knew how to write a UCAS personal statement. Could I do a workshop or a session all by myself? Probably. But I reached out to 2 universities and we sort of broke it, and we actually went through samples, and the university could give perspective on how it is perceived and read. So you see, it completes the sort of cycle for a student. I'm talking to them about how they should start thinking about it, how they could write about it. And then it's sort of, when the university comes in, they talk about, this is one versus another. I mean, not even versus, this is one and this is another one. And, this is the way it's interpreted or it's perceived or it's read. So I think students thought about, okay, but I read it a little differently, and so then that led to conversations on how you write could be looked at differently by different people, right? So how do you sort of come to a point where you know it'll be perceived the way you want it to be perceived? And that takes practice, and that takes a lot of more engagement or a lot of attempts of writing, right? And then through my university, colleagues and friends, they helped me immensely on how I can give feedback. So yes, I knew how to write it. I knew how to get them started, but also the finesse in giving feedback is something that I learned from many conversations over a period of time with my university colleagues. So I think having a system where it's I learn from you, you teach me, you learn from me, I learn from you, and not having like this whole thing about, well, I'm from the university, so this is not my, and you also see that you're sort of, both of you are responsible for giving the right information at the right time, in the right manner. A lot of times your information may just overwhelm the counselor or the student.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. What I hear is collaboration is really, really important, and building those relationships between the university and the school counselor. How do universities who maybe have not, or international staff at universities, how do they build those relationships with counselors if they haven't been in country yet? Or maybe they're getting ready to plan. This is a two-part question here, I realize. Or maybe they're planning to come to India or South Asia and they want to connect with certain schools. How do they do that?
Call us. Can I say that?
That's a good answer. Obviously, your role with Acumen is to do just that. And I think it might be quite interesting to explore, and not giving the details behind the magic behind the background for what Acumen do, but just sort of how the value that Acumen is bringing in connecting those universities to school counselors. How are we finding them and maintaining those relationships so that they're accessible for the university partner?
Like I said, collaboration. Like I said, connecting the dots, making sure that every attempt or every action is with the intent to be purposeful, to be mindful of guiding young lives, right? So I would say, for a university, I would say find the mid path between being a marketeer and being a counselor. I know you're not trained for counseling. I know that, but it's very different when you're interacting with young students versus looking at marketing a product or a service, right? It's about owning the fact that you can influence an important stage of a life, and really sort of being conscious of that. So I would say for a university to sort of find that balance of where they stand in that spectrum of marketing and counseling, and find the sweet spot, find the right person who would be able to balance this. So that's I think a starting point. The other is also, do you go to a school and do you tell the counselor, I want 15 minutes of a chat before or after my student interaction, whether it is at a fair, whether it's at a session? That can give you a lot more. Are you reading the website and asking other friends who may be in the industry, or asking or coming back to the AUPC team to say, I'm going to this city, tell me 2-3 people who I can meet and we'd be happy to help. So, really sort of looking at the work that different schools are doing. Looking at what's happening on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
So engaging, even if you don't know, maybe a university's done something and you see comments of counselors or of others, you do get a sense of who's who. You do get a sense of what people in different regions think, or how are they approaching, or what are their comments like, or where do they need help. So I think just having your eyes and ears open and having, I'm going to say this again, having someone in AUPC sort of
Yeah.
have someone in AUPC to chat with.
Yeah. I liked what you said there, guiding young lives. I think that's ultimately, in many ways, what Acumen does in all the things that we do. So that's quite a powerful statement there, Amrita. So if I was a university representative, and we were having a conversation about how I connect with schools, what is it school counselors want? Just what is it they want, and maybe also what is it they need if those things are not the same?
I'm going to give you examples.
Perfect.
Yeah.
We love a good example.
Yeah. They're overwhelmed. So even if schools have counselors, they have one counselor for like 100 kids.
Yeah.
Right.
It's overwhelming.
Yeah. So, or even if where there are teams, if there's a team of counselors where nobody has less than 50 kids of the graduating class, right? And then you also have kids coming from 9th grade and equivalent to talk about summer programs, profile building, psychometric assessments, et cetera, right? Like a whole lot. And then you have parents coming in, et cetera. So understand that the student to counselor ratio isn't the most healthy in any part of the world. Okay. So that's your starting point, or that's an important data point to know. Therefore, and what they don't want is to be overwhelmed.
They clearly need help. That's what
They're already
need
overwhelmed.
Support. Yeah.
Yeah. So they need support. So support could be if there is an application system which has certain nuances, right? Maybe have pro tips on that.
Okay.
Maybe like create a Loom video on common mistakes that students do on this application. That would be immensely helpful.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think I know some prospective university students that would really, really benefit from something like that as well themselves. So
Yeah.
That's great.
Our nomenclatures across regions are not the same. Right? So is it senior secondary? Is it high school? Every application will have like a slightly different wording. So our nomenclatures. So quick Loom videos on those, things are useful, because try and understand by the time the child comes to the application stage, the amount of pressure and stress there is, right? So what can you do to ease that off, right? Then if there are certain programs that have a prerequisite of a high school subject, are you telling that to the counselor or the children ahead of time, right? If they don't have those subjects in schools, or they can't meet those prerequisites within a school system, is there an alternative way that is acceptable, right? Is there an opportunity to see the university for a counselor?
Like,
Be at the university for 2 days,
yeah.
right? A lot of people travel when they say that we are open on these days for...
Oh, the big open days.
Yeah, the big open days.
But a lot of universities do open days on the same day, I have come to find out myself. So I imagine that makes it quite difficult for counselors to travel over.
And also, are we looking at the counselor's calendar to sort of...
Absolutely.
Yeah. Can you do that in different ways?
Yep.
Right? So I would say that counselors are already overwhelmed. I wouldn't say can you make their job easier? I would say, can you be an extended arm, or can you be of support and help?
Well, I think you could make the job easier. I think that's a fair thing to say. Providing extra support, as we've already talked about, and giving them more tools to arm themselves when they're speaking to their students, to help their students. I think that's absolutely fair.
Yeah, and is there a way to see course recommendations Is there a way? Like there's so. I used to struggle, and this is real. I would look up universities, and they would have so many economics programs. Okay, like they would have 8, 9, 12 programs in economics, and I would sort of struggle to. I would have to see each course modules, like with my specs and power glasses. To see how one is like, okay, I get it. How is economics and sociology different from economics and computer science? But it doesn't end there, right? There's so many courses, right? And within the umbrella of economics. Can you just help me create, these are the 8 programs, highlight the module which is unique to that program, and tell me if the outcome of this program would be different from another program within the umbrella.
Yeah.
So that I can suggest the right program to the student.
Yeah. I mean, if you don't work for that university, you don't know. And how do you then market that university to your students without having all the tools?
Yeah, and you could, and that's a great point, Katrina, that you bring in, that I don't work at the university. So is the program differentiation, or is the program USP that you're telling me general to the region? Or is it 80% general and 20% is, or this is a disclaimer here that this happens at our university and I don't know about the others, or it only happens at our university and I know that 100%.
Absolutely, yeah.
So.
Yeah. So we've been talking a lot about school counselors and internationalization in the sense of Indian and South Asian students going to North America, the UK, New Zealand, Australia. But we also know that internationalization isn't just the East going to the West. We know that it's both ways. So in your experience, how can not just universities, but schools earlier and earlier in a student's education journey partner with schools in India, South Asia, and beyond to help expose students to other cultures and, as I say, internationalize more?
Okay, so I think that's a really interesting segment that's sort of waking up to the opportunity and to the need to expose students both ways. I mean, east to west, west to east, both ways, both sides of the world to each other. So, for example, we had an Australian high school come into India for an India familiarization trip, which we sort of curated for them, where they went to schools in 3 cities, met the school leaders, understood what their wish list is for internationalization and how are they looking at internationalization. And they found such amazing common threads, like learning a language, right? Which is a regional language.
Oh, wow.
So if a school in Australia is offering a foreign language, that could be Hindi, which is here, right? So could that be taught virtually? Or if they have the Indian diaspora there, can the Hindi ed teacher here collaborate with the Hindi teacher in Australia to make the delivery of the curriculum more exciting, more engaging? So that was one. Then of course, Australia and India have the love for cricket in common.
UK too.
Oh yes, and they felt like, so with a boarding school, could they do like a longer exchange program which was cricket based, right? So you will see that there are such sort of cross sections which can allow students from different backgrounds to collaborate and work with each other, and in the process sort of understand different backgrounds, nationalities, identities, how it is to work, what is the common language, lingo, is there, and sort of meet more informally and not just sort of, and see if that experience is rewarding, which then reinforces wanting to aspire for international education, right? School leaders had, the conversations between school leaders was very interesting because they all spoke about how old their schools are. Like we had a school which is 10 years old, you had a school that's 100 years old, and how that impacts where they are now and what they are ready for. So I think similar. So this is a school to a school engagement, which I think brings tremendous potential to the forefront. Exchange programs have traditionally been, a thing in schools. Like when I was in school back in the 90s, I had a French student stay with me, right? So I think that experience was so nice. I mean, we're still in touch. I may have learned a little bit of French back then, which of course I've forgotten. But I think the fact that you know someone in another country, you can ask someone about, how would French community look at this, or how do they think about this? What do they think about politics in our country? How is it there? How is it that they're perceiving it? It just broadens your worldview, and there's no other way to do it than a real-time experience. So I think that's sort of interesting. And, and then we had a university in the US come to us, and they have very, very robust programs in performing arts. And they're trying to build like a global community of artists, etc. And
well, that's exciting.
And how do you learn about arts and performing arts? Only through culture, only through different geographies. And yeah, so that's, so we're trying to look at the number of dance forms India has, right?
Oh, yeah.
So costumes look so different in different regions, right? So I think that was really interesting. And it's, so we sort of connected them to schools that offer performing arts in high school, where there is a big scene of performing arts, which you would know if you're here, right? Like otherwise, it would be tough to navigate the right kind of schools to go to. We connected them with, let's say, to the theater educator, to the dance educator, and what their experience has been. What are the dance forms that are popular? Is jazz popular? Is ballet popular? Is traditional Indian dance form popular, etc., right? Then we connected them to organizations that work in promoting Indian art forms and culture and heritage. We sort of went around some key museums and theaters and sort of showed them what the facility is like, because I think for theater, performing arts, a lot depends on the kind of facilities and, So I think there is huge opportunity. So they realized that there's so much of equipment and technology that, they could sort of educate the community here about, and there's so much that they can learn about different dance forms, and it was interesting because they made, like, the dancer in the group that was traveling made a comment about, I've always learned about eye expression or communicating with the eye or through the eye. I don't know if what would be correct, by observing Indian dance form.
Mm. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think there is huge potential to look at not just a university looking at collaborating with schools, but schools, K-12 to K-12 engagement at middle school, at high school, and sort of.
It's definitely about connecting the world better. Mm-hmm. And I imagine in that example, that also saves the university and helps the individuals, the students that are learning more firsthand about the heritage and the culture of India or South Asia, from moving beyond imitation to truly understanding and embracing a culture, and doing it correctly and in the way that makes sense, rather than what you see in just Bollywood films. I think we get as someone from the UK, I think we get a lot of exposure to those types of things. But until I had been in India, I didn't truly understand and fully appreciate the beauty and the history of all the different types of dance and theater and art there that you would only get by being in country and meeting people, and that sort of, as we say, reverse sort of internationalization. So
yeah, and think about it, and I've been thinking as I woke up this morning and I was going through a couple of school websites. I was thinking about universities and schools across the world. How many of them have preparing the students for a global world?
Yeah.
Or global citizens.
Absolutely.
In their mission statements?
Yeah.
Majority of the schools do. Or preparing them for the world of tomorrow. The world of tomorrow is interconnected, quick, smart, and well-rounded. And internationalization is a big part of that. So how are you sort of bringing that into the way you're leading an institution, or you're thinking about a school or thinking about a university? This is the time.
And this facet of our AUPC of your team is actually quite new. So it's a really exciting time to be an Acumen University partner. I would imagine this is a new way to open up the world. So I imagine that we'll see more exciting examples later on this year and going forward, as people are made more aware of the need and of the benefits of doing this kind of activity.
Well, I'm excited.
Yeah, well, I'm excited. Well, that's good.
Yeah.
And I'm sure they are. If the typical school year wasn't enough for some students, as I do know some personally, some interns that I've had seeking out summer programs, how do universities or schools engage with Indian and South Asian schools and universities in creating summer programs, exchange programs, that kind of thing, and where do they start in building such a thing?
Like I've said before, the starting point is calling us. Oh my God, okay. I think there is immense appetite and need for I wouldn't say just for summer programs, for programs, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we just tend to use summer programs because that's probably pretty much the largest break that kids across the world get. So, that timing sort of works well. But I would just say that there is immense appetite and need for different kinds of programs, short term, I would say like a week to 3 weeks, that kind of a time window to help students experience or have an immersion to a country, to a field of study, to a type of industry or sector, which gives them a real feel of what it would be like to pursue those kind of programs, what are the kind of opportunities that come out of it, what is like a day in the life of
Yeah.
an art and design student. So what they see today is this conversation, but do they know how long it took to come to this 10-minute
Yeah.
clip, right? And how many iterations went through it? Or how hard was it to edit it, right? Yeah. So when you're shooting the next time, you do need to have like that 10-second pause, like we spoke about, to have the cut
Absolutely.
and reconnect, right?
Editing's key.
Yes. So I think really, and it's very simple. Do you see fashion? Do you see different lengths of shirts, length of sleeves, design of sleeves, buttons at the back or in the front or in the side? We didn't have those options when we were growing up,
No,
right?
Absolutely not.
Right? So if the number of options are increasing, and each student is looking at applying to universities across 2 or 3 regions, or 2 regions plus their home country. Summer programs are a great way to give them a tester of, or a test of, or like a dipstick experience of those, right? So that's what I would say. And so it comes either through, then students have that experience and they say, okay, I like this, I don't like this. Or this I really like, but it was hard, so I will have to work on this, right? Or this was so good, it was just right up my alley, and I think I need to do this. This is meant for me.
Yep.
So for them to be able to do this is why we need to have programs.
So we've talked a lot about school counselors and the things that universities and other schools need to think about when partnering and finding the school counselors, and what makes for good strategy, and how to get there. Mm-hmm. Calling Acumen. But
I'm almost tempted to say calling at 987 something like that.
Yeah, your phone will be ringing off the hook. I'm sure you do not want that. You get enough calls. So we've talked about all those things, and I think, when we sort of round off the conversation here, when we look at this huge opportunity for schools and universities in this partnership and internationalization, are there any particular cities or regions, more than just tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, but is there anywhere particular that you're seeing hotspots, or you're saying there's not enough here connecting, there's not enough collaboration here, and they need it? So if you're looking for somewhere to go, this is where it should be.
Okay, so I'm not going to give you these are the cities. Okay.
Fair enough.
I'm going to, request everyone who's watching this to maybe access the Acumen K-12 report that we released earlier this year, which talks about the K-12 landscape of India.
Okay.
So you're looking at where are the international schools growing, where are the number of high schools, heavily populated. You're looking at where are the counselors emerging from, in which regions, right? So there are lots of pieces there that can help you pick those regions, and then sort of see how those regions are responding to your institutions, or have you been going to those regions, and what are the opportunities to go to those regions and what to offer? So I would say get to the Acumen K-12 report, which the team, has put together. And we are going to be at it. So we're going to sort of release this every year and provide more insights into the K-12 landscape in India and South Asia as we go along. So yes, there are pieces for you to pick up. So, and I think it wouldn't be fair to say these are the cities simply because there's a story behind, or why, or what makes that city important. And I think that's why the report sort of gives you that time to read from the starting point. So from once upon a time to
Absolutely.
where it ended, right? And why are those regions important?
Well, that's an amazing way to finish off. I think the report has been downloaded significantly so far, and I'm certain that following this conversation, more people will be interested in getting those key insights. And we talk about data throughout this conversation, and that is always where anyone should start anything is with the data. So thank you so much, Amrita, for joining me. I look forward to future conversations. I look forward to us having more examples and conversations with our university partners about the amazing work that they're doing with you. So I think we'll sign off with see you again soon, and really, really glad that you're here in the UK, seeing our team this week. So thank you so much for coming here.
Thank you, my pleasure. And I did get in the summer, so with
exactly.
me. And
Well, the weather's been nice.
Yes. Thank you. And I hope at Acumen and with collaboration, we are able to have more purposeful young kids
Absolutely.
around the world.
Guiding students. Guiding students.
Guiding young lives.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you. Pleasure.